Yeah, let's take a look. I'm interested in learning more about Stephen A. Smith and what he actually stands for, what he actually believes, what sort of political movement he actually would represent if he ran for president or if he got involved in this conversation. But what I will say is that I appreciate people are already starting the conversation, because I know everyone likes to complain about how America is so dominated by election culture and horse race stuff, and it's like we just had an election, we're already talking about the next one. But in this one specific instance, I actually think it's really healthy for the country and for democracy that we do start having this conversation as soon as possible, and that people like Stephen A. Smith with the platform, regardless of what they stand for or believe in politically, normalize the idea of running against Donald Trump. Again, I know I don't want to sound hyperbolic, but I do think that should be normalized and expected. People saying, yes, I'm going to run against Donald Trump. There will be an election in 2028. That way, just in case there's not, people, react accordingly. There's a little bit more of a, backlash from the public. If Trump tries to pull some crazy shit, if Elon tries to pull some crazy shit and they try to stay in power, there need to be challengers. There need to be opponents.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Stephen A. Smith's politics are not my politics at all. We can unpack the good, the bad, and the ugly about him. What I do think he represents is a guy that the American people could immediately connect to, a guy who's been invited in countless Americans' homes for over a decade. He's well known. He's likable. He's very good on the mic. He's a smooth talker. He's sophisticated in the sense that he knows how to think through ambitious media opportunity or political opportunity and follow through with it. Now, I think he's wishy-washy. I don't think he knows 100% what he believes on every issue. I don't think he's a policy wonk. I think we could shred him if we wanted to, but I'm really interested in examining what he represents.
Yeah,
Gavin mentioned.
And I would say all of those same things you could say about Donald Trump. And I actually think that's why he's so successful as a politician, because he doesn't seem overly ideological. Right now, I think the whole Trump project is starting to feel just like traditional Reagan, anarcho-capitalism, austerity, right, with the Doge stuff. But before Elon took over, I do think that a huge part of Trump's appeal is that he did not seem overly ideological. He was just like, I'm shooting from the hip, and I'm going to kind of combine various ideologies into my unique prescription for these issues. And again, he convinced people of a lot of things that didn't pull well when he announced his candidacy.
Oh, 100%. And I think he earned that trust and that leeway with individuals by being on TV, by being that like boss on The Apprentice. I think being the tough guy sports broadcaster that lays down the law and is, oh, let me explain this to you. No, you're totally incorrect here. I'm going to big dog you, doggy. That attitude would translate into somebody that like would make Stephen A. Smith a savvy politician. Now, I think it's always a little bit much. And because Donald Trump proved it could be done, we're going to just have to deal with it forever now. I think it would be a lot nicer if he'd been ambitious enough to get into politics, but not so ambitious to be like, I want to be the president. Like, I could see Stephen A. Smith running and winning for the Senate. I start to get skittish when I see him running for the president. I don't think he'll actually pull it off, but we can hear from him first.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? It's almost impossible to say if he'll actually do it, but we'll see. Let's take a look at this though.
I doubt I'll ever run. It's not me. I live a pretty good life, and I don't want to ruin it by getting involved in politics.
Really?
But I got to tell y'all something. The Democratic Party looks so pathetic after this election. I might entertain running. I just might change my mind one day. I doubt it, but I might. Because how much would it take to beat y'all? And Trump can't run again.
Well, actually, a lot of people are starting to put forward that it's more likely than not that we see an effort made to really push to get Trump a third term.
He's done.
Yeah. What I do think he's 100% right about, and why I think this is important to talk about, again, even if he doesn't ultimately end up running, is he's 100% right about the pathetic state of the Democratic Party and just a complete lack of leadership. There's no leaders in the Democratic Party, guys. There's literally not a single leader. No one even knows who the fuck Hakeem Jeffries is. You know, you ask your average person, they don't know who the fuck that guy is. They're like, oh, the guy that kind of like the cheap Obama impersonator or whatever. Like, you know, there's no leader. Most people probably couldn't even tell you a single fucking Democrat that's like, you know, elected in Congress or the Senate or whatever. They have no brand. They have no ideology. They have no principles. They have no strategy. It's a completely useless party with a total void of leadership. And the only thing about this era that makes me at all optimistic and hopeful is that when there is that sort of a void of leadership, it does provide an opportunity for there to be a complete makeover for the Democratic Party to kind of be rebuilt in the image of a new leader, someone that is bold, someone that understands the gravity of the situation we're in, someone that realizes that we need a revolutionary political movement to meet this moment. So I'm not getting overly optimistic about that. I mean, how many times can you get played by the Democratic Party, right? But the void, that has to be filled by something. And there's a real opportunity, the likes of which I don't think there has been in a little bit, for a leader to step in and say, no, we got to do things different. And you're going to follow me. And there's going to be a new tone set.
Yeah, I agree. I really don't think it's going to be Stephen A. Smith. And I'm kind of grateful for that because I don't think his political messaging would be good for the political party. But he is a frequent guest on Fox News. He's close personal friends with Sean Hannity. And they had a bunch of interesting conversations where he did level some legitimate critiques against the Democratic Party. In the lead up to the election, he was an ardent supporter of Kamala Harris. He would go after Donald Trump for a lot of the reasons you would expect. January 6th, denying the results of the election, just being an unserious candidate, being a kind of guy who had no respect for the rule of law. And, he would also talk about how he wanted to see a black woman be president, right? He would talk about how he wanted Kamala Harris to get across the finish line. And I think he represented a very reasonable middle American point of view on Kamala Harris. He was in a comfortable, privileged position, but he wanted to see the country go in what he felt would be a progressive direction. What I thought was shocking about Stephen A. Smith, for as bold and ardent and steadfast as he was in his support for Kamala Harris in the lead up to the election, he kind of pulled a Cenk Uygur when it was over and went back on Fox News and he says, I voted Democrat and I've got to tell you something right now. I don't like the fact that I did. And he goes on to talk about how he feels like he got played and he feels like he thought that the policies that in the momentum that Kamala Harris had was more legitimate than it turned out to be. And he doesn't offer a ton of like really substantive policy criticisms. It's more about the fact that he seems pissed off that she lost and he publicly supported her. And now he is kind of backtracking and finding new ways to kind of justify that. So it seems a little flimsy to me now, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's able to kind of iron out like a clear path for himself and be like, okay, this is my politics. I'm going to find a message and stick to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's fair. Do you know, I know you said you referenced that you don't think it would be good for the Democratic Party if they were to take his advice or messaging or whatever. What about his message or style do you not think is good?
Well, I mean, it would be like corporate Democratic policy. It would be like basically, I'm a Republican Democrat corporate centrist.
I just mean as far as like, I agree, obviously he doesn't have our politics. I just mean like as far as the Democratic brand and like appealing to people, he does seem like a pretty compelling messenger.
Right, but that's all he is. He would be a compelling messenger that then would have to have a politics invented for him. The reason that Donald Trump was compelling was because he got Steve Bannon's politics served up for him and he messaged effectively on top of that. I don't think Stephen A., outside of, being an advocate for black capitalism, being an advocate for what he would call
he's
excellent.
He's that kind of guy?
Oh, yeah, 100%. And
someone retweeted him from like a while ago saying that he like most identified with Bernie Sanders. So I kind of had it in my mind that he was like a little bit more of a independent populist type, but I didn't know he was just like a total capitalist.
He seems to be like a pretty hardcore capitalist from what I've seen from him over the years. And when I've been exposed to his politics, it's very much like,
oh yeah, damn, he was on the Bernie train in 2009. Most people didn't even know who the fuck Bernie was. He says, I loved hearing Bernie Sanders, he personifies my views as an independent. But again, that's just one tweet. I mean, who knows if I don't think he even supported Bernie when he ran. So, clearly that didn't mean much.
For sure. And I'm not, and he's not all bad, right? Like if you found some, you would find good quotes from him. But I think Kyle Kalinske over the years has done a good job kind of covering Stephen A. Smith. Let me see, secular talk and see.
That's interesting though. It is weird that he just kind of snuggled up to MAGA, as Kyle pointed out in that video, and as you just pointed out a second ago, Zach. And then now he wants to say, "I'm going to run against Trump."
Right?
Kind of Cenk Uygur vibes almost.
That's exactly what I said. Yeah,
yeah. I'm going to run against Donald Trump. He's a fascist, but also, maybe there's something to this MAGA movement.
Yeah, like here's a video from him from 9 years ago that Kyle responded to where he's like, Stephen A. Smith wants all blacks to vote Republican. Like he just seems across the, like Stephen A. Smith sims for Saudi Arabia. Like he's just like a corporate guy. You know what I mean? And I don't think that's a particularly bad thing. I think he wants to be in touch with the American people. I think he means well, but I think he's so out of touch. I think that the only reason that we're like lurching towards him to be like, oh, wow, look at this guy, is because all of the potential options from the Democrat are so dead end. They're so without personality. They're so uninspired that when you see a guy who's charismatic, who seems to have a pep in his step, a fire in his belly, and a guy that, is handsome and can articulate, you're like, well, maybe this guy will be our answer. It was the same thing. I mean, not the same thing, but a similar thing. I feel like with Jon Stewart, it was just like, who is anybody that can actually relate and connect to people? We need that to be our guy. Stephen A. can connect to people. I would just worry that what he does after he connects with them is not in our best interest.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, we'd have to hear what he actually believes when it comes to a variety of actual specific policies. And yeah, I imagine you're right. He's more of a centrist corporate type than anything. But yeah, what the Democratic Party really does need is a leader right now. And again, even, completely removing my specific progressive policies from the discussion, what they really need is a leader with charisma to sell their alternative brand of politics to the American people in a way that seems like it actually is an alternative to the revolutionary energy that MAGA brings to the table. As cringy as that sounds, it's true. What they're doing is big and bold, and it makes people at least feel like, oh, okay, I voted for this guy and he's actually doing something. Like he's actually kind of doing the things he talked about doing on the campaign trail. And again, I'm not trying to give credit to Donald Trump, but it is interesting to see a president actually you really fucking use the executive authority, right? Like in a way that has almost never happened in our entire life, maybe besides in the wake of 9/11. Yeah, with the Patriot Act and, the complete destruction of our civil liberties and all that stuff. But, I do fear that, again, that a lot of American people they're not going to see it for what it is, which is austerity. And they are going to see it as like, oh yeah, this guy's actually bringing the revolution to Washington. He's actually coming in there with that sledgehammer. And I mean, even going back to 2016, I remember Michael Moore's analysis of why Donald Trump won was that a lot of Americans do just want to throw a grenade right into the middle of the fucking government. And that is what Donald Trump is doing. So again, he is, in a sense, kind of delivering on that campaign promise, even though I think I don't think American people voted for all the austerity and the Elon Musk and the Doge stuff. But again, it doesn't feel like anything happens when Democrats are in power. Even if some shitty infrastructure bill does get passed, it doesn't feel like big things are happening. And now it's like, oh, we're going to acquire Greenland. We're going to acquire this. We're going to do that. This is big. This is bold. Even if it doesn't end up fucking helping anyone's life, at least it seems bold.
Oh, I mean, yeah, that is one of the downsides to democratic bureaucracy. They're obsessed with procedure. They're obsessed with paperwork. They're obsessed with dotting I's and crossing T's and all that stupid shit that people don't actually care about. And, Matt Taibbi wrote about this way back in his book, Spanking the Donkey, in the early 2000s. It's one of the really early Matt Taibbi books. It's actually fucking awesome. And he talks about how working people hate the government. Regular people hate the government because whenever they interact with the government, it fucks them in the ass. When they interact with the government, it's to write a check to pay property taxes. When they interact with the government, it's the DMV taking fucking forever. When they interact with the government, it's because they are having a problem with their Social Security or their Medicaid or their Medicare. And it becomes effective for private capitalist interest to come in there and be like, oh, we would be doing such a better job if it wasn't for the government holding us back. Then when they defund the government, there's no regulation. Well, then, oh, boom, move on to a new town, sell your snake oil there. We're not actually going to deliver on all of those promises. They will be totally empty. So I agree that that is the huge setback of the Democratic Party. And what Donald Trump reveals is that you do have a ton of power when you're president. He's wielding it really poorly. He is, basically destroying our country as fast as he can with all of his crony friends. Like, we didn't even talk about it with Ben Dixon, but it's something that I've been keeping an eye out of. He's selling off all kinds of government land. That's land that we own. Okay, the public land trusts are going to get raided like you could not fucking believe under the next Trump administration. It is going to be a nightmare. On top of that, just any old piece of land that the government owns, they're going to sell to a private business, and then that business is going to lease the land back to Americans so that our tax dollars can pay for it again at an inflated fucking rate to enrich these assholes. Okay, that's what we need to be pointing out, because that's what's destroying our country, right? But the fact that the president has the authority to do that kind of makes people wonder, hey, couldn't Joe Biden have been doing good things when he was in office? Couldn't Barack Obama have used the power of the pen to make our lives a little fucking easier? Yeah, he could have, but he chose not to. Okay, just like Donald Trump is choosing to actively destroy our country, and people then, they have nothing else to do. They have to hope that something better is going to be rebuilt from it. So they project a fantasy onto somebody like Elon Musk. He's going to be the knight in shining armor to save them.
Yep.